It's a series of exclusive here on News Central Television, and we've just covered the election in Kenya, where the Deputy President, William Ruto, won that election. Today, my guest is someone who's also held that same position in West Africa of Nigeria, specifically. Today, my guest is Atiku Abubakar, who's not a newbie in politics and someone who's having a shot for the second time under the People's Democratic Party. Good to have you, Atiku Abubakar.
You're welcome.
Well, many are saying that one of the things that may count for you has to do with your experience in governance and in politics. How well do you hold that to heart?
Well, as a developing country, I mean, experience, competence, leadership, are key, to the emergence of any political leader, in a developing country like Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria has tremendous challenges, and it's quite big, quite diverse, and currently we have all types of challenges. You cannot take a country like that, which is a leading country in Africa, and hand it over to untested, leadership.
When we talk about untested, some have said we have accidental leaders on the continent, and that is why we have problems. But for Atiku Abubakar, you've been prepared since the mid-90s. How does that come to bear? Let's start talking about Nigeria. A lot of people are saying things need to change and change for real. Looking at the economy to start with, you're an astute businessman and someone who also was vice president, who oversaw what Nigeria went through in the privatization sector. Take us through what you think is the real problem Nigeria is going through at the moment.
I think the real problem was the lack of continuity in government policies. Well, you can argue and say that because it is not one party that has been governing the country, but there is this tendency, when opposition parties take over, they try also to reverse all, achievements that have been recorded by, the previous government and start all over again. This is one challenge that has actually, affected, our democracy and our growth in our economy and so on and so forth. So I think some of the policies sometimes, my thinking is that sometimes they need to be legislated upon. I mean, if they are considered, actually policies that are in the best interest of the country, whoever comes into government should be able to continue with those policies. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We are now in the second listing of an opposition, party being in government, and they seem to have reversed whatever progress that was made by the previous government simply because they are in opposition. I don't think that's the correct approach, for governance in a developing country like Nigeria.
Do you also think the headhunting is also a problem, putting the right people to actually manage the economy?
Definitely, yes. Definitely, headhunting is also a problem because I remember when we came into office, I undertook a tour of the whole world. I went to the United States, I went to Europe, headhunting, very competent and capable Nigerians to come help us, in managing the country. And I think we did a wonderfully good job with those young people. Some of them have gone back, some of them have stayed.
Now let's talk about security. First, it started with Nigeria's northeast, which you well understand because that's a region you're from. And now Nigeria's northwest and Nigerians woke up someday, there's hardly no geopolitical zone you do not have one challenge or the other in terms of security. What's going on as an elder statesman?
Yeah, a lot of things are going wrong. Of course, we have massive unemployment in the country. We have had the highest rate of unemployment, as a nation we have ever witnessed. And then secondly, we have schools not functioning, particularly in the northeast where the Boko Haram, many schools were closed. And these children are liable, to be recruited by criminal gangs into all types of criminal activities. And then, of course, you also have, I cannot say that, we don't have funding, because we have introduced funding of, schools during our tenure. We established education tax. Nigerians pay education tax so that all children can go to school. In fact, it's a compulsory. We made it compulsory up to secondary school level. But then, of course, when we disburse these funds to states and local governments, these funds are not utilized as they should be. So I think these are some of the challenges, that has brought about or contributed to the insecurity we now face in the country.
Out of school children should worry you, because we see them all over the place, and the figure has tripled for Nigeria.
It's very worrisome. You may also know that I'm involved in the education sector, because I run, a whole range of education institutions, from nursery to elementary to primary, secondary, up to university level. So I'm very, very passionate about education. My only worry is that the other tiers of government, like the local governments and the state government, are not doing enough as they should be, actually, to make sure that every child goes to school.
We'll come back to security, and this time, if we can get a sense of what, because you have a policy document, and that's why some say, looking at Alhaji Atiku Abubakar's policy document, open that of security for those who haven't actually seen your policy document. How do you hope to rejig and ensure that Nigerians have, some sense of security if you get elected as president?
If I get elected as a president, first and foremost, I will make sure that we recruit enough policemen and train them within the shortest possible time. I have always or often given an illustration with Egypt. I said Egypt has a population of about 80 million people. They have more than 3 million policemen on the streets. Nigeria, with a population of 250 million people, has less than 400,000 policemen. So you can see that, first and foremost, there are not even enough policemen on the street. Secondly, after massive recruitment, there will be need to equip the police. And there is also the need to introduce technology in our policing. I admire a country like the UAE. You hardly can see a policeman in uniform or a policeman carrying a gun. Why? Because, they make use of smart, technology to monitor everybody who comes into the country. In fact, if you visit the United Arab, the day you enter, you are being monitored till you leave the country. So wherever you are being monitored and you are being seen. So besides recruiting enough personnel and training them, there is also need for us to include, to incorporate, smart policing. That is, in other words, technology into our policing system.
You think that is possible, workable in Nigeria?
It's quite possible. We are more educated than UAE. I mean, our literacy level compared to UAE, we are more advanced than UAE. So what qualification does it require you, to know technology? Even a primary school student, can handle technology if trained. It's a question of training.
Let's look at the power sector. You spoke recently, and almost everyone on the continent has been talking about it and said, wait a minute, a situation whereby in South Africa presently there's load shedding by the company Eskom in South Africa. Malawi also has a problem. And Nigerians are saying, wait a minute, ours is getting worse as other African countries are struggling. You spoke and you said it's fixable.
Yeah, it's fixable in the sense that, one, we have to decentralize our both generation and transmission system. At the moment, we are relying more on gas generation, of electricity, while we have abundant, hydro potentials in the country. So many huge dams are there not being utilized. All what you need to do is install turbines and you generate power. And then you transmit them. There is also the need, even the transmission system, to be also decentralized. Because I give example, our sources of power during the First Republic. Virtually, what is today south, south, and southeast was being supplied electricity by coal from Enugu. And the entire north was being supplied, through hydro dams. So you can see that you can decentralize generation. You can also decentralize transmission. What happens is that when you now generate so much energy and your transmission is not consistent with the energy you are generating, you are bound to have breakdown of the transmission system.
As we've always seen with the TCN transmission company.
Yes. So I believe there is, not that I believe, in fact, I conducted feasibility studies, by a reputable international company, some times ago, before we left office, to advise us on the fastest and possible way we can supply electricity to the country. And we had a study that by 2005, we would have been able to do that. But unfortunately, we never kept, we never implemented that report. And that's why we are where we are still today.
And for the energy sector, because it's tied to what we looked at now, what we've just discussed about the power sector and NNPC. And we saw what your government did, the Olusegun Obasanjo government, which you're part of, what it did then with the NNPC. Do you think that should be revisited, talking about privatization the oil sector?
I have always held the belief that, the oil sector has to be privatized. Because that's the best way to get, what we should be getting from that sector. It's simply not the responsibility of government to start, managing, the oil and gas sector. I mean, you can compare and see the LNG project, which we are in partnership with the private sector. See the returns we get and compare it what we get from NNPC that's solely run by government. First of all, there is red tape, and there is a lot of corruption there. And, so definitely it is better to privatize. I mean, before the elections, I advocated privatization of NNPC. They accused me and said I wanted to privatize it to my friends. And only for them now to turn around and say now they are privatizing an NPC. Of course, they have set up all the structures, but they have not done the actual privatization because they have not gone to the stock market. Up till now, all the shares are being held by an NPC. Nobody else is holding any shares. So you can say nominally or in theory, they have announced they are privatizing, but that has not been yet implemented.
Now, this is the election year and the campaigns have not started. What are you doing to ensure that those aggrieved party members are on the same page with you for your party's victory?
There is nothing unusual there to have disagreement within a political party. We are meeting and trying to reconcile with ourselves and trying to assure everybody that everybody will be carried along in the party. Nobody is going to be discriminated or sidelined. So I believe we are going to achieve reconciliation ultimately.
The final one before we go, and on the continent, it's said that there's a lack of inspiring leaders. Should you get elected, what would you do to reverse that thinking that indeed in Africa are inspiring leaders?
First and foremost, I will start with the ECOWAS sub-region. Nigeria has been the beacon, everything of ECOWAS. Every country in ECOWAS was looking up to Nigeria. It is not so today. I would like to start by, first of all, giving ECOWAS the right kind of leadership they expect of a huge country and a powerful country like Nigeria. And then from there, we now launch into continental participation.
Elijah Atiku Abubakar, many thanks for speaking with News Central Television.
Yeah, most welcome. Thank you very much.